Ding, 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 ding. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're going to stop here and pause for a little bit and just chat with you guys. So we love you so much. And we're just going to talk about some promotional stuff we got going on. You know, like we got all the good stuff, you know, the truthzilla.org/donate, where you can go contribute to the show. If you find any value, you can give it back. PayPal, Venmo, CashApp, Bitcoin, shitcoin, whatever you want to do.
Nice, sir.
That was good, huh?
Well done.
Okay.
Yes.
Also, get yourself a Truthzilla t-shirt.
Yes.
These things are off the hook. It's all coming apart with Fauci, the whole Fauci narrative, so you can pile on with a Fauci gave us all AIDS t-shirt. It's great. Go check it out. Truthzilla.org/shirts. So help pile on to the madness. And you guys, we got a really special deal going on here. So we have our first sponsor of the show.
Yeah.
He's actually a good friend of the shows, Mr. Cody. Cody Crystals, dude.
Yes.
Cody's _ crystals. Let me make sure I got that right on Instagram. You guys go check him out, dude. He's living the dream. He is selling his wares online and making a living doing what he loves doing. And his crystals are freaking amazing. He sells like all these gems and crystals, and they're sculpted.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's CODYS _ crystals, CRYSTALS.
Yeah.
He's been with us since the beginning, and he's helping the truth train chug along here, you
Heck
guys.
yeah.
So much love to Cody, man. Love
So
what you're
much
doing.
love,
So
yes.
badass.
Thank you, Cody, for
At least go
sure.
follow him, check out what he's doing, dude. So rad.
Absolutely.
So
I
good.
love it. I sit there with my youngest, and we watch his live shows.
Yeah,
so it's pretty
totally.
fantastic. So definitely catch him.
Yep. Totally.
All right, guys. So if you can't donate financially, please just like, share, and subscribe to our show. That really helps beat the algorithms.
Absolutely. And don't forget to please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes and I think Spotify.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
all of them.
Please do though, guys. Like you're listening. Like thumbs up us if you're watching this on YouTube. Thumbs up us, please.
Make a good comment, too.
Share.
Comments goes a long ways.
We'll talk to you.
Yeah, let Tim Cook know that we don't give a shit about his agenda, right? So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, you guys, check out truthtrs.com, right?
Yes.
Truthtrs.com.
Yes.
New sponsor of ours as well. We talk a lot about environmental toxins, heavy metals, spray it in the air, in the water, in the food. Well, advanced TRS will help get all that stuff
Injected.
out of your system. You know, it's
Yes.
proven. I've used it. We've all used it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
great stuff.
phenomenal.
Phenomenal results.
Give
Look
it
at the
to our children.
testimonials.
Yep.
Truthtrs.com. Truthtrs.com. So anyway,
Absolutely
guys.
a product that we all could get behind and
100%.
has been so beneficial to our lives. So it's we're
Absolutely.
excited to see all
Yep.
the people that
we
help.
practice what we preach, and we're trying to offer solutions. We're all about solutions on this show. Well, here is a solution for you. Awesome. There you
I
go.
still eat M&Ms.
She still eats M&Ms. I don't know.
Not
if
too often.
I don't know if advanced TRS will help.
Okay,
with
it's not
M&Ms.
true.
I
I've been
don't
going
know.
down to Handel's ice cream too often though.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
You don't know
TRS.
if advanced TRS will
I don't know if advanced TRS will get rid
Not
of
with
ice
the
cream
dairy,
and M&Ms, but
but-
you know, it's worth a shot. I don't know.
You might want to talk to Tim James about those
Oh yeah,
problems.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right.
There you go. All right, guys, enjoy the show.
Welcome to Truthzilla. I am Megan, sitting here with Scott and Ed.
Hello.
Our guest tonight is Bob Snee, a practicing attorney here in Oregon who is known for his activism in the medical freedom movement. He's an accomplished attorney with 30 years litigation experience that includes vaccine rights. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad that
Thanks
you're
for inviting me along.
Thanks so much for coming on, Bob. You know, I've seen you in some of the medical freedom, the Oregonians for Medical Freedom meetings we've had. I remember one specifically. We were on 8th Street here in Eugene, and you spoke amongst a few other people that spoke. And I'm pretty sure it was you that were telling me that, you were somewhere by a CDC building, and you looked in a window, and there was a poster on the wall that said, they wanted to get. Long story short, that eventually they wanted to get a vaccine that would change our DNA, and that would kind of be the ultimate goal, right? And was it you that said that?
I think you might be confusing me with somebody else.
Okay, well, sorry for saying
I have
that.
I've been to Atlanta, and I've been to a protest at CDC there
Sure.
about 4 years ago now.
Sure.
But didn't never get a chance to look in any of the windows.
Okay, well, someone
we were
at
out
the
on the
meeting I
street.
saw you at said that, but well, anyways, the purpose being, Oregonians for Medical Freedom has been a big part of the movement in Oregon, and it's great to have you here. So I guess a kind of good place to start is how did you get involved in the medical freedom movement?
When my son, who's going to be 25 next month, was under a year old and suffered an adverse reaction to his vaccines, gave me pause to continue to look into the issues and research them further. And then about 4 years later, 3-4 years later, as he was getting ready to attend school, I approached a law school classmate of mine who's then a state senator, and I looked at the laws and realized that Oregon had a religious exemption for vaccines for school children, but they didn't have a philosophical exemption. And at that time, I didn't belong to a church that was opposed to vaccination. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. So I figured, I looked around the country at that time. I think there's about 17 states that recognize a philosophical exemption, and approached her and suggested that we asked her if she would introduce a bill on my request that would add a philosophical exemption. Got a hearing in front of the Senate Education Committee. The state health department, as it was called back then, came out and opposed the bill, saying we don't need this religious exemption because we have a broad administrative definition of religion, which includes, quote, any set of beliefs, practices, or ethical values, close quote. So the bill never made it out of committee, but back in that would have been 2001. At that time, there's probably about 1%, 2% of school children claim the religious exemption or a medical exemption. And over the next couple of years, I'd like to hopefully think it was because of the publicity of that hearing on that bill, exemption rates slowly started to climb in Oregon. Interesting note that state senator and former classmate is now our current governor, Kate Brown.
Oh.
Oh man, she's not a big fan. We're not big fans. We'll say that. We'll put it that way, right?
Well, she doesn't return my phone calls or emails, so I don't think she's a fan of me anymore either.
Oh my!
Oh wow.
Can we get her phone number and email? I mean, no. I'm just kidding.
There's some things
I have some things. I have some pent up. I mean, I can be very diplomatic about it. I feel like
we have some information for her.
Yeah, we would like to educate her. That's it. I'd be like, so Kate, listen. Okay, so here, I don't know where you're getting your information from, but here's an alternative perspective, perhaps. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Over the next few years, I got busy raising the family and focusing on my practice, and was away from the movement for a number of years. And then 2013 came along. And that was when they decided to change the law to remove religious exemptions and create the non-medical exemption that required you to watch an education module or get signed off by your doctor so you could claim that exemption. I just happened to have a Court of Appeals case on a constitutional law issue that I was arguing at the Supreme Court building in Salem, which is at the other end of the block from the state capitol, the same day that the Senate was going to be debating. I think it was Senate Bill, I forget the number, back in 2013, but the Senate bill that created the education module was going to be debated on the floor of the Senate. So as soon as I finished my oral argument, I ran to the Senate Capitol building, went to the Senate gallery to watch the argument. It passed on party lines, and as soon as the bill passed, I became an instant lobbyist. I ran to the other end of the building where the House was in session, passed a note to my representative from the district I was living in at the time, said, I need to speak to you. And 5-10 minutes later, he came out and said, listen, this bill just passed in the House and the Senate. It's coming to your house in the next couple of days. I need you to vote against this bill. Sadly, he was a Democrat and he voted for it. It passed, and I was one of 3 people that appeared in the House committee hearing on that bill to testify against it at that time. It kind of slid under the radar for a lot of folks, including some national organizations, National Vaccine Information Center, which has a presence here in Oregon and usually sends somebody to testify against bills that are going to take away vaccine rights.
Sure.
Well, that vaccine module, to watch it, because I've had to watch it, it's so it's in such error, and what information they would have, what little bit they would shove down your throat through those modules is not any kind of informed consent. It's not any kind of informed anything. No. It's an absolute joke, and it's
propaganda.
It really is. It's an insult to intelligence to have to sit and watch that, and they want you to watch it for each child. And they wanted me, anytime we switched schools, like we couldn't transfer records over, so I had to rewatch it for each child. And it's just I mean, the whole time I'm just making notes about, no, this isn't accurate. This isn't accurate. This is wrong. You're wrong there. You just turn the volume off and just get down to the end. And
If the module was truly about giving people informed consent, it'd be mandatory that everybody watch it, including those who go to their doctor and say, it's time for your baby's vaccines. Okay. And without giving it a second thought. The sole purpose of that education module is to create burdens, to make it harder to claim an exemption.
Yes.
In the hopes that people are going to say, I'm not going to bother wasting an hour sitting through this. I'll just take my kid to the doctor and inject him with toxins that I don't know about.
Yeah.
It's really the whole mindset it's mind-boggling. They think that us vaccine risk aware people don't read the science, don't have legitimate concerns, don't have valid reasons for the concerns of what can potentially happen from the accumulation of toxins from various vaccines.
Yes. And the reality is most of us end up here because of a vaccine injured child or someone close to us being injured. We've seen it because honestly, I mean, it's so propagandized from a young age. It's just it's hard to go against this narrative. Like I have to say, like I kind of was drug into this movement by the mother of my children who was calling it out, right? And even watching it in my own child, I don't it can't be the vaccine. Right? Like, and I had to really see the evidence that the science that they claim they have doesn't exist. Right? Like it's based,
right.
It's a house of cards that falls as soon as you pull one out. So
it's based on a faith that rises to the level of religious proportions.
Yes. 100%. So
when you have studies of one vaccine and one ingredient to make a blanket statement that all vaccines don't create autism or don't create all these other issues, that's a leap of faith. There's no science behind that whatsoever.
Right.
And I mean, when you go the other way, the causation doesn't equal, or correlation doesn't equal causation is their whole argument. But I mean, there are so many correlations that you have to start taking the abundance of the evidence and I mean, I think most of us,
unless you're claiming that vaccines save lives.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Then there is a correlation, and it's a causation is proven.
Yeah, of course, 100%. But JB Hanley does proves that point over and over so well. But so I want to kind of know, being on the law side of it, there was a bill that was coming through, and I don't know what that happened that was going to make it. They were going to try to remove the medical exemption in Oregon, right? They were going to try to do that. I mean, they tried last year and it didn't go through. And I mean, we saw it happen in California, and it's kind of it's in every legislative season now, right? It's kind of there's a risk of it happening.
Well, let's see. Senate bill this year, the bill number was Senate Bill 254.
Yeah.
254.
And since 2015, that was the third bill introduced in Oregon that would have eliminated exemptions, non-medical exemptions for school children. Oregonians for Medical Freedom came into being in 2015 for Senate Bill 442, which was Senator Steiner Hayward's first attempt to eliminate vaccine exemptions. He was the primary sponsor of that bill. And the bill, when it was initially introduced, wasn't a complete elimination of exemptions, but by the time it got to committee, it had been amended to include that. So yeah, it's been a constant drumbeat. I've looking at some of the documents from an organization called as NACHO, the National Organization of City and County Health Officers. Back in the early 2003, 2004, they did a presentation up in Washington. And their policy goal is that, blanket goal is, eventually we want to establish vaccines coverage from cradle to grave. And in order to get adults, you and I, to accept mandates, they've got to eliminate the exemptions for children first. If they get eliminated for children first, then it's going to be easier for them to mandate them for adults. And really, quite honestly, the only reason Senate Bill 254 did not get anywhere this year, it never even got a hearing in committee, is because of COVID and the attention that they're putting on that. And they also knew it was going to be a toxic bill and that they were going to face a lot of opposition like they did in 2019.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that the goal, and maybe it was you that said this at that same meeting I referenced earlier, that I think that the goal was, this, what is it, a $50 billion a year industry now for the childhood vaccines. When they can turn it into, when they can get the adults on board, it could turn into like $1 trillion, I mean, maybe not $1 trillion.
Well, let's see. 1986 is when they passed the act that made the vaccines for children liability free for manufacturers. The vaccine schedule for children has more than tripled since then. There's, depending upon who you ask or look at, there's between 170 to 300 different vaccines in development today. The majority of those are targeted towards adults and adult illnesses and diseases. I mean, we run out of childhood diseases. How many other childhood diseases are there that they haven't attacked with the vaccine yet?
Yeah.
Well, part of it is just inventing new ones, right? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
So much to get into, man. I've got some questions for sure.
Well, however, I mean, I think, we need to really get into how we're sitting in Oregon. I mean, I think now, maybe the focus has shifted off these childhood vaccines for this legislative season. Maybe it'll bring, I'm sure it's coming back around, but, with the focus on COVID and what they've done with COVID.
I haven't even given, it could come back before this session is over.
Sure.
Until sine die happens, which I think is June 30th. Any bill that's currently in play that's already made it to the House that it didn't originate in, a favorite tactic in Salem is gutting stuff. As long as the relating to clause pertains to healthcare or health issues, they can gut and stuff a bill, change the bill entirely, and put in all of the provisions of what was in 254 and throw it in a bill that's already past one house and is in the other house.
God, that's so terrible. But I mean, I know, was it 2019 when they tried to push that one? I mean, how many thousands of people were at the courthouse protesting? I do think this is more than just Oregon, though. I mean, this is across the country. Every time they're trying to do this in every state, and in every state, but they're coming up to a lot of opposition. I mean, I think in Oregon, I heard like the lawmakers and stuff were like, they've never seen a resistance like this to any bill, right? Like they've never seen this many people.
We had people daily walking the halls, meeting legislatures, senators and representatives, passing out cookies, being friendly, getting to know them as people, bringing their kids with them, letting them know, this is my son, this is my child who's vaccine injured. This is what they've gone through because of this. Please don't take away the right to choose from me. Until the Timber Unity rally that was held 2 years ago or a year ago, the Oregonians for Medical Freedom rally that we held in front of Salem to debate, it was then House Bill 3063 in 2019. They had never seen a rally of that size. Of course, the news media reported as a couple hundred protests, anti-vax protesters. Reality, I figure between 2,500 and 3,000 people showed up for our second rally that we had that year.
That's incredible. And that's great. I mean, that's what we need to do, though. It's what we absolutely must do.
We're doing it next week, next Wednesday.
I'll
June
see you
9th,
there. I'll see you there.
From 10 to 2. We're having another rally having a vigil for all of the children that have been harmed from COVID. Their education's been stolen from them. They've been emotionally harmed. The psychological damage of being forced to wear a mask in school, to wear a mask while you're running on a basketball court or on a cross-country trail. It's insanity. And after the release of Fauci's emails in the past couple of days, the fact that we're still worried about people having a mask on in Oregon just astounds me. I mean, it's like, when is common sense and science going to be followed?
Yeah, it absolutely
People don't want
is
to be
true.
ripped away from their illusions.
Oh, they want to be right. They want to be right. They want to be right more than they want to
they've had a lot of power and they've had a
truth.
lot of virtue, and they've felt very powerful to be able to tell other people what they can and can't do. And I think that just kind of created that snowball effect of all of these disempowered humans that all of a sudden had all of this supposed this feeling of authority over other people, and people don't want to give that up.
And sadly, all of that energy, the enemy becomes those of us who are risk aware, who don't want to take a experimental product that's still not approved by the FDA.
Right.
Most vaccines take 3 to 5 years to get to the status where they get approved. This one took 9 months, and the long-term testing is still underway.
Absolutely.
On us.
By definition, it's still an experimental vaccine, but yet there's this headlong rush, free donuts and beer if you get your vaccine.
Oh, it's just everywhere you turn. It's just the relentless propaganda campaign coming at you from every single angle, all across all social media platforms. It's just like nothing I've ever seen. It's like it almost seems like all these infrastructures were designed specifically for this purpose. Like it's just being maximize the potential of all these things specifically for and geared to only propagandize us towards taking a vaccine. It's just insane.
It truly is a broad and all-encompassing propaganda campaign.
Yeah.
And I've lost a lot of, I'm not sure that I had much trust and faith in public health officials to begin with, but when I see what they're doing, what they focus on, all they are is a marketing arm for the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
They have, they don't care about, 1 out of 6 kids have attention deficit disorders today.
Right.
Allergies are through the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, 54% of children have a chronic health issue.
Yes.
In the United States of America, the #1 country in the world, supposedly, our health is terrible.
Yeah.
It really is terrible. I'm not saying that's from vaccines, but they're not even looking to figure out what's causing all of this. 1 in 32 children being autistic today compared to 1 in 10,000 when I was going to school. I didn't know any autistic kids. We didn't have, it was unheard of.
There's more chemicals in our food, 3 times the number of vaccines. They're spraying all of the atmosphere and everything we breathe with every kind of toxin that we don't want to be breathing. And
GMOs and glyphosate and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can't pinpoint that it's exactly only vaccines, but certainly with the accumulation, I mean, it's the accumulation of the toxicity all around us, really. And I think, like what I heard someone says, like vaccines are like the trigger that like puts you over, right? Like they're the often that's what happens. You're bombarded with so many toxic, whether it's heavy metals or whatever, that you're getting in. The vaccine gets that right into you, and that's the thing that pushes you over the edge, right? Like,
Totally.
I think that's
Soft kill.
I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Paul Thomas back in 2015 when we both testified in front of the Senate hearing committee. I had the fortuitous luck of sitting next to him at an empty seat before and after we each testified. And he really nailed it in his book, The Vaccine Friendly Plan, in the first chapter. Toxins, toxins, toxins.
100%.
It's a matter of the body being overloaded and not able to naturally detox these chemicals and adjuvants and other ingredients that cause our systems to go haywire.
well, and when you look at the huge entity that is meant to quote unquote save us and keep us healthy, when they profit off of us being sick, they profit off of us dying, they profit off of our symptoms, they profit off of all of the fallout that people are experiencing with autoimmune issues from vaccines. I mean, it's it's really telling that, I mean, even at this point, the fact that it's not more broadly questioned about why vitamin D, sunlight, and proper psychological fellowship with other human beings is not being shoved, but people are lining up for to be literally the experiment of this broad government entity at the with the promise of a donut at the end. It just blows my mind.
What's crazy is that people, doctors that I know presented information to Oregon Health Authority last summer, showed them the documentation of how vitamin D could help reduce the number of people who are getting infected and lessen the symptoms of those who did get infected.
They don't want to know about it.
Conversations. Yeah, they don't. Not one healthy recommendation has come out from Oregon Health Authority. And get Get out in the sun, get some fresh air and vitamin D.
Yeah.
Get it naturally or supplement yourself with vitamin D. Early last summer, my partner got a hold of a study out of Austria that included the autopsies of 11 people that had died from COVID. And looking through the autopsies, there was one common factor among all 11 people that had died.
Vitamin D.
The vitamin D was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of them was deficient in vitamin D.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, here's something that's inexpensive, readily available,
And works.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't want us to have it.
And it's not only that, but you'll get deplatformed. You'll get your license taken away. Like, I didn't even know that there was a law enforcement branch or arm of the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. And I've heard cases of them, like, literally, like, swatting offices that recommend, like a vitamin C therapy or something like
Operation
vitamin D.
Quack Hack.
Well, they
Operation
really
Quack
don't
Hack.
want you to
Mary
talk
Jane.
about vitamin
Yeah.
C therapy.
Yep. It's just insane. So,
It's insane to take health advice from people who also talk about how they want to depopulate the world.
Oh.
Yes.
I love it, Bob. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. This is great. Now we're getting into it.
Yeah.
I want to get into some like technicals that, really apply to here in Oregon, because I feel like, as the rest of the country, perhaps maybe I don't know, the rest of the world is pretty, like I hear stories out of Canada, I hear stories out of Europe, Australia. They're still pretty much under the boot right now, but it seems like as Americans, like most of the country is moving away from all this tyranny, whereas Oregon specifically is moving like
We're
headlong
holding on
into
to
it.
the last.
Holding on. And specifically some of the things, more recent
My
developments.
good
like,
buddy Kate Brown's causing all that.
Exactly.
She's a nice little puppet for China, helping to implement their model here to show the rest of the nation. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And so
I've been calling Oregon the 45th district of the CCP for a year now.
Exactly, absolutely is. But so kind of in our little circles, a lot of the things, the discussions have been around like House Bill 3057 that recently got passed, right? The one regarding
To individually identifiable.
yeah.
information.
So how like the public now it can be made readily available. Certain what used to be private health information, and also embedded within that is like the discussion related to ORS 433121, which talks about how they can detain you if they deem you to be a public health risk, stuff like that. Like, what are some of the implications of this?
Some of those laws have been on the books for a while.
Yeah,
Actually, the ability to detain and quarantine people who are infected, and that's what we've always done in the past. If there's been an infectious disease outbreak, we quarantine people who are sick, not people who are healthy. Yeah. This is the first time in the history of the world that healthy people have been quarantined and locked down.
And that PCR test is telling healthy people that they're not healthy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Carrie Mullis does a good job of tearing apart Anthony Fauci when talking about the PCR test as
Absolutely.
well. Carrie was the creator of that test and says it was never designed for diagnostic purposes.
Right.
It's a production
amplification.
process.
Yeah.
The bills that passed 3057 made some technical changes, but the vast majority of the statutes that affected had already been in place. Yes, there's some expansion of who OHA could share private health information with, particularly in relation to COVID. That also has some sunset provisions in there. It only extends for another year or two. I think 2022 it expires. So it's not a long lasting. It's just to deal with the pandemic or plandemic.
Quote unquote pandemic. Quote unquote pandemic. Absolutely. Absolutely.
To force the healthy to comply, essentially,
Absolutely.
if they decide to.
Absolutely. So obviously, my initial thinking of it was like how this ties into the concept of the vaccine passport, for lack of a better word, or some sort of like requirement to provide identification. Like you go to a store and they'll have some kiosk and they can your public information is now stored in that kiosk and they can scan it and be like, oh no, sir, you can't come in because you've not been vaccinated. Do you see that it leads to that at all, or?
I think there are some who would like to see that instituted.
Yeah.
I think the whole vaccine passport is truly a cover.
Mm-hmm.
It goes beyond that. I think it's an attempt to create what's going on in China with their social credit
Absolutely.
control. And I think it's a worldwide plan. It's not just the U.S. that's under the gun, so to speak, with all of this. And because of our freedoms and our Bill of Rights, we're standing in the way of holding back the rest of the world from being forced into conforming and being plugged into, you can't do what you want to do or where you want to do. We need people over here. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just
those
saw
who
an
are in
article.
control, the puppet masters.
Yeah.
I just saw an article today that the European Union is trying to get a digital passport for across the whole European Union. They don't even mention the vaccine in the article. Is interesting, but just all your identifying information, which is it's going to the China model. You're a number in the system, your data at that point.
Yeah.
Well, let's just put a chip in you that can be read.
Of course,
that contains all that data. Okay. Let's put a chip in you that you'll get paid your cryptocurrency for all of the work.
Yeah.
I mean, there are patents out there that Bill Gates owns.
Yep.
Yeah.
With devices that will monitor
Yep.
5 or 6 different outputs from your body to determine whether you're actually doing work or not. So
Yeah,
if
and-
you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're not going to get your paid.
Exactly. It says it actually in that patent says it'll monitor your body activity data and your brain activity, possibly literally in the patent. And what is that patent number, folks, ladies and gentlemen?
This is
Drum roll, please.
606.
WO2020060606. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's just insane. It's
You
just
guys are on top of this.
Oh.
I'm impressed.
aha.
We've been doing this for a year or two.
Oh, we've been diving. We've been doing the deep dives. Yes, indeed. Oh man. So, let's see. So, vaccine passports. I had one other thing on that, but it eluded me.
So do you think?
Vaccine passports are a complete,
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
well, they are so unconstitutional
Oh,
and
yeah.
un-American. It's just,
Yep.
And it astounds me that, and there is the social conditioning and brainwashing again, that some people are so much in favor of it.
Yeah.
That we're even entertaining it. That we even have to have these conversations as American
Exactly.
citizens. Like we've
Yes.
lost the last generation. Like something terrible has happened here,
And-
and we know what a lot of those terrible things are. But we're like looking back on like, whoa, they hit us with this, and now eyes are opening, and we're going back to see agenda 2030 coming to pass, and we're watching the UN and who runs the NIH, and we're watching all of these same players transfer. I mean, it's
Right.
and now that the matrix is shattered, it's
And
quite
another thing on that too, it's like so there's been a lot of controversy, in the headlines that certain politicians are equating what we're seeing now to the Holocaust, right? They're saying like, oh, the vaccine passport or whatever, wearing a mask in a store, that's as bad as the Holocaust. And it's like, no, that's not. I don't think what we're trying to argue here. What we're trying to say is what we're seeing now and the type of top-down authoritarian control. If you follow the model of this 10 stages of genocide, like it leads, like the idea of classification, dehumanization, polarization. What we're seeing is exactly the same as the lead up to what caused the Holocaust. So we're not saying that this is the same as the murder of millions of innocent people. What we're saying is like this type of
We're leading up
authoritarian
to it.
structure is the same as
history
the lead up to
repeating.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Exactly.
pretty clean,
is.
cut and dry. I don't see how that's controversial.
No.
I don't know.
It's odd. I have several friends that are of Jewish background that get offended whenever that comparison gets made. I also have a picture of a protest that happened in Israel back in February when they were protesting a vaccine passport in Israel, and big banner sign compares the yellow star to the vaccine passport.
Yeah.
So it's just the same thing. It's just another step in the progression.
Absolutely.
Look at how society is, marginalizing those. It's happened to us anti-vaxxers for years.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
We've been, stereotyped and subject to prejudice for years. Vaccinate your damn kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
hate it when they had the damn.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me. It's my child. I get to decide what gets injected into my child's body. It's my body.
Yeah.
I'm an autonomous human being. I am sovereign over my own body. And if I'm not sovereign over my own body, I'm a slave to somebody.
Yes.
100%.
That's it.
100%.
Yes.
That's it. We're trying to break that paradigm. So I remember what I was going to say. And so my plan, in the event that there is some sort of situation or confrontation, or if this does, here in Oregon, if they do start to require some sort of piece of paper or some sort of digital passport to go into a store, I look at things like Article 1, Section 20 of the Oregon State Constitution that says that you cannot pass a law that applies certain rules to this set of people over here and not these certain people over here. Apartheid. So I feel like it is my duty as a citizen to oppose unconstitutional things like that. Am I incorrect? Like if there's a law or something that literally is fundamentally unconstitutional, it is my obligation to oppose that. Right?
Well, it's funny. I've been practicing law since 1985. And lawyers are really good at saying, well, the words say that, but we didn't really mean that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are a number of different statutory interpretation things, and it comes to interpreting constitutional phrases as well. And it's not as blanket coverage as you would think. And for that clause to apply, and I think it does in this situation, are we talking about a true class? Is it really a class that's defined, or is it the law that's defining the class? Here, we're talking about the class of people who are naturally born who haven't modified their body with a GNA therapy technique, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a true class of people.
Yes.
And it's vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Yep.
And they made sure to separate us out.
Sometimes some of the case law talks about some classes, the class has to be immutable. It can't be changed. Well, this is one of those classes that can be changed. You can become vaccinated. You can't go become unvaccinated once you're vaccinated, but you can be changed from an unvaccinated person to a vaccinated person. But the class is also one that is socially recognized as having been subject to adverse social prejudice. And you can definitely say that about anti-vaxxers.
Absolutely.
100%.
It's gotten worse and worse over the past 5 or 10 years. I started collecting memes. I've got a collection of memes, of anti-vax memes that are, just cruel and disgusting statements about people towards those. Make sure you get your crotch goblins vaccinated.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's gross, man.
When I was a kid, we used to have chickenpox parties.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yep.
Now it's like, don't go to Tommy's house. He's unvaccinated. You're gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
So definitely the social prejudice is there as an element that makes it such that if and when a lawsuit gets taken challenging a vaccine passport in Oregon, I'm pretty confident that a objective court, and I use that word, emphasize that word objective, because I'm not sure if we have one today.
I don't
No.
think so.
Particularly after their ruling last year with the
emergency
governor's emergency powers.
Yeah, that blew my
and
mind.
such.
I shouldn't have for Oregon, but I was really disheartened and discouraged because I thought, I was waiting for it to go to the Supreme Court. I wish that it would. I was like, yeah, they're gonna stand up because this is obvious violation of civil liberties. This is obvious violation. Like we're so beyond this 30 days, and the fact that they upheld it, I just really lost all faith in our state Supreme Court that day. Yeah, that was a terrible move. And it said they all are just bought into this agenda.
So I have no doubt that unvaccinated is a true suspect class. But whether there's a overriding government interest that says that the discrimination is okay, that's going to be the key turning point for a court to decide. Is public health, and it comes down to what they consider the true science on it is. Is an unvaccinated healthy person a risk? No.
Right.
Are they slightly more of a risk because they're unvaccinated? I suppose so. But gee, if your vaccine works, what are you worried about?
Right.
It's the unvaccinated people who are exposing themselves and the ones that are incurring the risk to themselves. They're not sharing that risk on the vaccinated population, are they? You can't have it both ways. The vaccine either works for you or it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah, none of these manufacturers claim that their vaccine stops the spread or prevents transmission.
Well, I mean, the studies weren't designed.
But OHA will
just
tell you that it's safe and effective, and we need to attain herd immunity with a vaccine that doesn't create immunity.
Yeah.
How does that work exactly?
Well,
Right.
you just changed the
Oh,
definition
I
of
get
herd
it.
immunity.
my vaccine works only if you wear your mask if you're not unvaccinated.
Yeah. Oh, yes, exactly. Oh, God.
That's the logic of OHA. My vaccine will only work if you wear a mask if you're not vaccinated.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy. One other area, and there's a couple different routes I want to go down here, is the idea of consent, right? And the idea of consent, I think, is becoming muddied, and they're trying to push it into really dark corners, in my opinion. It can spill out into other areas if once we start adopting consent in the way that they're trying to when it comes to like children and vaccines. That could be troublesome in other areas. I want to definitely talk about, like, here in Oregon, I've heard cases of, like little ice cream trucks and stuff or something. Actually, that was Canada, was the ice cream
I
one.
was reading about the Oregon City.
Oregon City. Okay, so they're doing like vaccine clinics
where they were keeping parents out, and they had police presence, and they were escorting children in under, I think there was like a treat being offered, and parents weren't being allowed to approach. And that, to me, feels like it's illegal. Where's the parental sovereignty, and how are children able to safely give consent? And with this dialogue that they're pushing, that and Scott could quote it better, but where they're essentially saying that, look, if you send your child to school on the days that we're doing vaccine clinics, if they're there, then that means you consented, whether or not you consent.
That's it. It's the idea of
what happens when
implied consent.
Implied consent, yeah.
And what happens if when one of these children dies or is sick, that the parents, because I know, I mean, to me, I know it's cut and dried, but we're talking about like vaccine manufacturers. They don't have liability when you've given consent, but if you haven't given consent and now they're hurting or killing you with it, well, are we getting into a different gray area? Because now we're not vaccinated. That was meant to be under people who were consenting to being vaccinated, not people who are being vaccinated against their will. And it blows my mind that we have a situation where we have, I mean, it shouldn't, because they're government agents, but that we have our police officers who, live in the communities among us, starting to uphold and enforce these crimes against the most innocent among us, while completely invalidating the sovereignty of the parents over their children.
Honestly, my position is that vaccinating a child with this experimental vaccine for a disease that they have a 99.9959% chance of surviving, for the purpose of trying to protect the elderly or immunocompromised, is a crime against humanity.
Yes.
100%.
It's disgusting.
But they can't convince us that we have to have it to go to work if they didn't convince us to stick it in our children's arm. And it's like you say, that once they take it, that was where I feel like in Oregon we lost a lot of ground, and I'm sure nationwide, but I can only speak to here.
No,
when they got us to mask our kids, that was like the foot in the door. Like, the next thing is, we're going to get you to take your kids down and get them this vaccine, and then by affiliation, you're going to have it.
It was just a holding. Yeah, it was just a holding place.
Yeah.
It's been on the books for a long time. In Oregon, children who are 15 and older can obtain medical or dental treatment without the consent of their parents. The statute also says that the doctor who provides the care or treatment, or dentist who provides the care or treatment, may advise the parent that it's occurred without incurring any liability for breaking the child's confidentiality or whatnot. Doctors turn it around completely and will often refuse to tell parents what they've done, which is an outrage in my mind, particularly for a product like the vaccine that's got no liability. And if on the off chance that a child has an adverse event that requires medical attention, that parent's going to be on the hook for it.
Yeah.
You're going to be financially responsible, because no one else is, and the child certainly doesn't have the means.
And nobody knows why that child's having a reaction. Who knows? They're not.
Exactly.
I mean, they're just in there because they're sick. They don't know.
How can the parent know how to treat the child if they don't know what the problem is in the first place? If they don't know, Johnny got a vaccine today, and that's why he's having this reaction, so I need to treat it this way. I'm just like, he's just having a little seizure. That's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and Western medicine isn't going to treat him anyway. Like, the answers aren't there. They're not going to get oxygen or ozone, therapy or heavy metal detox.
The CDC recommended, and several local health departments have already done so. Marion County being one, I've seen a copy of it, sent out an alert to all the providers saying, be on the lookout for myocarditis, particularly among teens when getting the COVID vaccine. The number of reports to the VAERS vaccine adverse event reporting system of teen injuries more than tripled in the past couple of weeks as we've started adding 15 and 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds to getting the vaccines.
All these perfectly healthy individuals, perfectly healthy a year ago, perfectly
Yeah.
healthy up till the day of the vaccine, would have continued to be
Right.
perfectly healthy had they not been shoved full of experimental toxins.
And let's not even forget, though, that even based on their data, which I believe is very skewed, like
Oh, yeah.
it is pretty much proven that children don't get and or spread this virus. I mean, kids, even if they were to get it, they don't spread it. So there's really no good reason to vaccinate a child other than it's to further that agenda.
It's the agenda and the indoctrination.
There's actually a study out of Spain, I believe, that showed that the presence of small children in a household with adults helped provide a buffer and helped protect the older members of the household and prevented them from getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-amplifying virus spreaders, which leads me to kind of I'm sure we can come back to that because there's so much more to talk about with the childhood stuff and just the crime of it, how the police are enforcing, like, keeping the parents away. That's just insane to me. I wanted to hear your thoughts about, but anyway, so there's also all this stuff about self-amplifying mRNA vaccines. Have you heard anything about this whole realm and the idea of, we've got a study here from 2018 from Johns Hopkins University talking about the science behind self-amplifying mRNA vaccines. The idea being you introduce the vaccines into a population, a small number of people or animals, but it does specifically talk about humans. Introduce it to a small number of people in a population, and then the vaccine itself will spread throughout the community.
Because
How is that not a complete violation of informed consent? Like, isn't that just across the board? Something that is just internationally considered
just
illegal.
a crime
on so
against
many,
humanity
so
that
many
nobody
levels.
can take back now.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with you one bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that totally obliterates informed consent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fluoride in our water obliterates informed consent.
Yeah, totally.
It's the hubris of the medical minds to think that they can mess with one little tiny piece of our genome and they're going to know all of the repercussions all along the way, how it's going to affect our body in a 6 month, 9 month period of time. It just, I just shake my head and I can't fathom how they could. If you don't know, and if the first maxim is first do no harm,
Yeah.
how can you proceed when you don't know?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
100%. You brought up fluoride. Now, just something that just caught my. I'm remembering, and it's probably about 6 months ago I heard about this, but I believe there was a case brought into Portland about the fluoride in the water. Did you know anything about that?
Wouldn't be in Portland because we don't have Portland's water is not fluoridated.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I thought it was
They've been able to keep that
Okay.
out. There is a case pending somewhere that, if it succeeds, could result in municipalities having to stop adding fluoride to the water.
Sure.
Haven't been following it, and I don't know what the status of that case is, but somebody is challenging it. And you got studies from Harvard that show that verifiable. They've had more than one study that shows that fluoridating the water reduces IQ by 5 to 10 points across the board.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to swallow the information that they would like us to take in and just do what they say to keep us quote unquote safe. As if
Maybe
they
that's
ever
what-
had our best interest at heart. When in the history of the world did our government or any other government have the best interest of their people at heart? And if we look further back into the medical history and we look at medical schools, I mean, I know there's a lot of good people that come out of there and they have good hearts and they have good intentions, but what they're being taught. Go ahead.
Now, see, on the flip side of that, maybe because Portland's water is not fluoridated, that's why Antifa is so popular in Portland.
Ah, maybe they're riled up. Maybe we need some fluoride up in Portland. Maybe we just need to.
They're not docile and compliant like they are in all the other places where they're all
Totally.
drinking fluoridated water.
Yeah, I heard recently. I think it was Charlie Robinson on his podcast Macroaggressions, which must listen type stuff. And I think he was talking about how, like, after World War II, Operation Paperclip, you know, all the Nazis came over here and they were like, wait a minute, you're not putting fluoride in the water? Man, you guys got to do that. Like, this is like straight out of like tactics for them, dude.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
So, man. So this all kind of leads to the big question, right? And I go back and forth on this, you know, black pilled, white pilled, you know, like, is there hope? Oh, there's no hope, you know, back and forth between that. And like, is there any way that we can win this in the court system? I feel like, I don't know. And I'm not trying to say like, we need to go drag everybody out of their mansions with guillotines and everything and pitchforks and all that stuff. But I mean, like, can we win this thing in the courts? Is it, will good prevail in the courts, or does this thing, I mean, I don't know. Do we
Or do we have to break away society and
Do we
retreat
just-
to the hills?
Yeah.
With the right case, the right fact scenario, and the right makeup on the court, I think we can and will win it in the courts.
Yeah.
I'm an eternal optimist, and I'll never give up hope and believing that we will defeat that. I did some research the other day on, you know, it all comes back to Jacobson versus Massachusetts,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Supreme Court case, 1905, smallpox outbreak in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What's our survival rate with COVID right now? For those in the under 60 in Oregon, it's 99.95.
Yeah.
I looked at today's weekly report and ran the numbers for everybody from 0 to 60.
Sure.
And yeah, 99.985. Okay. When Jacobson was decided, there was a smallpox outbreak in Cambridge. The fatality rate was 17% of the people infected. That's significantly different than 0.5% of people dying from a virus.
Yeah.
Oregon's population is 4 million, 4.25 million roughly. We just broke 200,000 people infected, period. There's still 4 million people who either have never been tested and had it or have never had it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Those 4 million people are still alive if they had it.
Yeah.
They didn't die from it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, we already know
And
the
so-
science behind the mask didn't save them, so it wasn't
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it wasn't that. So in terms of a threat to society, COVID nowhere near matches how dangerous smallpox was.
Mhm.
And the risk of an unvaccinated person circulating among 4 million people is nowhere near what it was in Cambridge in the midst of a smallpox outbreak.
And in that case, though, you always have to mention what the other side doesn't mention is that he just had to pay a fee, right? He had to pay a fine,
Correct.
right?
Yeah,
And-
they didn't strap him to a gurney and bring him to the hospital and forcibly inject his arm with the smallpox vaccine. No, he had to pay a fine of $5.
As Alan Dershowitz would have us believe. Is,
Yeah. So
A-okay.
what would you say? What would you say to Alan Dershowitz if you were face to face with him here, Mister? Just for our listeners that don't know, he's Mister. The state has the right to drag you out of your house and
plunge a needle into your arm. Yeah.
Yeah, Alan, I think had Alan and our Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had
Yeah.
a nice discussion.
Oh yeah.
And I think after that discussion, I don't know that Alan would continue to hold to that position.
Okay.
I think he's done some more research and dove into it a little bit deeper since then, and I think he would recant that statement today. There's also another interesting quote in the Jacobson case that people overlook, and I'll try to recite it from memory, but I'm not going to get it exactly perfect. I was going to try to pull it up, but haven't got it yet. It says, however, there is a realm of which that no government, including a government elected by the representatives of the people, that which it cannot cross. And to me, that gene therapy, potentially modifying my DNA, is that realm that cannot be crossed. I believe in a creator of the universe. I don't know what you want to call him.
Yeah.
Him, her, it. There is a supreme being that created all of us, and we all are creatures of nature, born of this earth, having our own individual free will. And I am my DNA. My DNA defines who I am. And I am not going to allow any government or any company to inject something in me that's could even potentially alter my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not going to happen, period.
Absolutely.
It could be a lethal injection. It could
Yeah.
be. It's just it could.
Oh.
It literally
It
is.
has been for
Has been, yeah.
4,600 people now that have claimed it.
Yeah.
At least probably a much higher number, but based on like what we know of how much gets reported.
Number
to
in Europe
bears,
is over
but-
16,000 now.
Wow. They
And
must
that's
have a
just
more.
what's being reported, because we know that in
Correct.
a lot of places they're burying that data and they're not attributing it to COVID. They're labeling it with all kinds of other things.
Well, I would bet that they are calling it COVID and not calling
as
it the vaccine.
not the vaccine, correct? So it's not being reported accurately. I mean, it's
We're also seeing some of the reported deaths on VAERS disappear.
Wow. Okay.
really.
Yes. Numbers of Dr. Henry Ely has been tracking it on a weekly basis. And why would numbers go down?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I mean, there's cover up. I mean, it's just so obvious that to anybody that sees it, like, it's so funny that I talk to people who are still completely into the whole, just maskies, right? For lack of a better word, just total maskies, right? And I tell them about VAERS. I'm like, hey, go look into VAERS. That's your assignment. Go look into VAERS. And they come back to me and they're like all excited because they're like, oh, well, it's just a bogus system. Like, anybody can report on it. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Why wouldn't they have, like, if this is the most important thing in the history of human civilization, this response to COVID and the vaccine rollout with this massive amounts of money and everything poured into it, why wouldn't they have this, like, robust system with very, 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 very
reporting
mandatory,
system as opposed
accurate,
to a passive system?
yeah, where we can collect realistic, accurate data. They have it out there purposefully as, like, this honeypot of nonsense so it can easily be discredited and sweep it all under the rug as nonsense conspiracy theory.
But yet they always point to VAERS as what they use for their post-marketing surveillance to make sure that there aren't any problems.
Wow. Interesting. So they get their cake and
Yeah.
eat it too, right?
They get it, bingo, exactly.
Yeah. It's the perfect system for treachery and
Under the PrEP Act with respect to the COVID vaccine, it's not a mandatory, it's not a voluntary system. It is a mandatory system. Doctors are required to report adverse events.
Okay.
However, I have a friend that lives up in Woodland, Washington that knows a she's still a nurse, but a former employee of Kaiser who quit because she was not allowed to chart adverse events in the medical charts of her patients.
Yeah,
Ooh.
we're hearing.
Specifically instructed not to, and said, I can't work under these conditions anymore. It's morally objective to me. I will not do that. If you caught Del Bigtree's High Wire episode today, he was talking to one of the nurses. He was talking to one of the nurses who's part of the lawsuit against Texas Methodist Hospital, who was just trying to mandate the EUA vaccine to all its employees. And I was just listening to her before we started, and she said the same thing. I was not allowed to chart adverse events. I was specifically instructed not to.
Yeah.
Where's that cover up coming from? Why are hospital administrators instructing their staff not to record adverse events?
I mean, we've heard that across the board
Yeah.
from hospitals. And
Yep.
like there is definitely some like I can't pinpoint exactly who it is where, but like that is happening across the country at least, right? Like we've seen evidence that of all over the place. So
Well, and I think they're able to. Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
no, you're good.
I think they're able to get away with not reporting also voluntarily to the system. My ex-husband's grandfather took the first dose of the vaccine because the family was very adamant and they all thought CNN was right. And then he got very, very, very sick and was in the hospital, and he got out and quote unquote began eating pudding, being able to eat pudding. And that same day that he was able to eat pudding again, they took him down for the second vaccine, and he is now passed. And the family will not, the doctors, the family, they said it's old age. He had other issues. We're not acknowledging that it was the vaccine at all. Not I, but this whole sect of people. And I think that's happening a lot.
And the
Across the
CDC looks at, as of the last update, I think we're up to 4,600 in the US, right?
Yep.
CDC says there's no discernible pattern.
Yeah.
There is. Over 40% of them occur within the first 24 to 48 hours post-injection.
Yeah.
If they were random and people are dying just because they're going to die naturally, you'd expect the same amount occurring each day would be the same amount of people dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Same number of people would die on the first day as have died on the 10th day after the injection.
Yep.
Yes.
But it's not happening that way.
No.
And I've been saying all along, I will believe that every one of those deaths is a coincidence when I read one story of somebody dying while waiting in line to get the vaccine.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Love that. That's
Yeah,
great. That's
absolutely.
great. That's a perfect little meme right there.
Yeah,
That's
for
great.
sure.
Bob, do you know how to make memes? That's a good one, man. Make it. Yeah, there you go. Man, crazy.
I mean, I
crazy,
think
crazy.
the bigger question. I mean, I've always said with the childhood schedule. I mean, the CDC has the data. They could just use the data they have to give us the vax versus unvax study that we've always wanted. You know,
But the CDC is bought and paid for by
they would
Big
never
Pharma.
do it. They would never do it because they know what they'd see. I mean, it takes like Dr. Paul Thomas to do it out of his practice, where he has vaccinated, partially vaccinated, and unvaccinated children, and the evidence is right there, right? But like we could do this on a massive scale if we had regulation agencies that actually worked for the people.
Right.
Yeah.
It's been captive agencies are nothing new in Washington.
Yeah.
The FDA has always been captive in the industries have been the ones who've always, it's been a revolving door of personnel between the regulatory agencies and the industries themselves. Right. And they've never, it was created 1900 or so. I think Teddy Roosevelt was responsible for creating the Food and Drug Administration. And from day one, it's always been a captive agency.
Mm.
Yeah.
CDC is no better.
Yeah.
They waive their conflicts of interest. When there's no scientific data whatsoever to suggest that 12 to 15-year-olds can safely get the Pfizer vaccine, but say, let's do it anyways. And, oh, by the way, you can also give the other childhood vaccines at the same time.
Yeah.
Where is the study that says that that's safe? It does not exist, but they're just going to assume that it is because, it's safe to give all the other vaccines at the same time. So it must be safe to also give those vaccines and the COVID vaccine at the same time.
Must be.
That's insane.
It must be.
It's insanity.
Yeah.
It must
There's
be.
no scientific basis whatsoever to it.
And it's blanket medicine because they would do it to a 6-month-old, to a 15-year-old. It doesn't matter to them, and that's another thing you were talking about, the whole the genome sequencing and how they've looked at one little part and just the hubris of them being able to think that now I understand what's going to happen forevermore, but they don't. And the same vaccine that they would give him, they would give a new baby. It doesn't matter to them. And really, when you look at this, for anybody to actually pretend that this isn't a grand experiment and we're the guinea pigs, and that they're not just diabolically jotting this down, not to help us, not to further us, not to save us from big, bad, pretend COVID, but to enslave us and to depopulate us and to make sure that we cannot procreate and to make sure that we're afraid of one another and to create this divisive world.
I think this is the starting point of them. I mean, I think this goes along with all of the Great Reset and all this stuff.
It's part of the agenda.
Oh, yeah.
They need to get into our bodies.
Yeah.
They need in. They're getting
getting closer.
Their path in.
They're getting
Well,
closer.
once they get the vaccine, and then we're going to agree for them to put the chips in our brain.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. They're going to make that illustrious. It's like the Brave New World where we're going to be begging for it. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so fun. Man.
Now it's the law of unintended consequences.
Ooh, there you go.
You really don't know what the effect is because the studies haven't been done.
Yeah.
You start messing around with gene therapy. This whole COVID vaccine thing, I'm going to date myself here. We're going to take you back to an episode of the original Star Trek series. Very first season, episode called Miri. The landing party lands on this Earth-like planet where one of the guys in red shirts who always dies in those episodes in the landing party gets attacked by this grotesque creature. They only shoot him with a stun on his phaser, but it's enough to kill the creature. Then they find that the planet is only populated by children, and young teens. And they discover that the scientists on that planet were working on these experiments to prolong life. And it worked for the kids. Those kids were 300 years old. But all the adults died, and all the children, when they hit puberty, turned into those grotesque creatures and died.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. Crazy.
Of course, Captain or Dr. McCoy saves the day with creating a vaccine from the serum from one of the people.
Man.
Wow.
They knew what they're
But-
doing.
Serious programming. I mean, we talk about the
Serious
programming
program.
all the time, but it really does just seep into every little thing.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So from a legal perspective, I want to ask you. So, did Fauci perjure himself? And do we have
Yeah.
enough? Do we have enough on these fools like the Klaus Schwabs of the world, the Faucis of the world? The Bill? Do we have enough for crimes against
Crimes
humanity?
against humanity.
Nuremberg 2 tomorrow.
Well, there's a German.
Do
They're
we
trying to
have-
bring it in Germany, right?
Yeah, something like that.
There's a trial in Germany, correct. Question is, do we have a body, a government, that hasn't been captured by pharma, that isn't part of the problem themselves, that's going to prosecute themselves?
Yeah.
Maybe.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Maybe Russia. That's why all the demonization in Russia. I mean, the president of Tanzania. We could have done it in Tanzania, but they took him out, right?
Belize.
Yeah,
What was it?
they
What was
did
it?
take him out.
What
Yeah.
was what's that other one that got the bribe money in Eastern Europe? That
Belize, right?
no. There was one country in Eastern Europe that I can't remember. Yeah, our friend Alex Craner was telling us about it. But they were he went public. The president said that they offered him $1 billion to lock down his country, and he said no.
It was Belize.
While
No,
the
it wasn't
victors
Belize.
in World
No, it
War
wasn't
II,
Belize.
Yeah.
No, it was.
while the victors in World War II did put many people on trial, and we got the Nuremberg Code
Yep.
that came out of that. Those same victors also, through Operation Paperclip, took
Yep.
the other scientists and doctors who they didn't try, but who were participating in the same experiments and same programs, and brought them to this country where they continued to do the same thing. So, it was a show trial for the world even back then.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Whether or not there's nobody's going to attack us and take us over. Well, and maybe China, but are they going to put Fauci on trial if China overruns the U.S.? No.
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
They helped create the virus in their laboratory, so
Absolutely.
and most likely released
Virus.
it rather than escaping from
Well,
there.
And like with all the other deep
Belarus.
state crime that
That's what it
Belarus.
was. It was Belarus.
But like
Yep.
everything else, we're not prosecuting and looking into Hunter Biden.
No.
We're not looking into Hillary Clinton. We're not looking into Barack Obama. We're not. So, I mean, I was so excited
James
and like
Clapper was-
vindicated
yeah.
that because we've been speaking these truths and like losing people that we love and having people to separate out from us to dare even try to shine light and try to help people through this diabolical brainwashing and this murder of humanity. And it's just shoot, where was I going with that? What were we just saying?
Crimes against humanity. Maybe.
Yeah, it is.
To follow up along those lines is one of the saddest realizations that I've come to as an attorney after 35 plus years of practicing, and it didn't even take me that long to get there, is that we do have a two-tiered justice system in this country. Yeah. It's not the rule of law applied to all. It depends who you are and where your power structure is, whether or not the law will be applied to you the way it should be or not.
Yep.
it is.
Certain laws for us, and then other laws for Ghislaine Maxwell, right? There you go.
Yeah, it's true.
Totally.
It's true.
Although she hasn't gotten bail yet, so there's hope
Oh yeah.
there.
Well, we'll see. Well, we're gonna keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
And
For
so
I
yeah,
wonder
just
if she's really in there though.
Yeah,
we haven't
God, I don't
seen a
know.
legitimate.
well, we saw some. There's a weird photo of her.
A
with
weird photo is
with
not a mugshot photo.
But we don't want to get Bob tied into a
Yeah,
Ghislaine Maxwell
okay.
Jeffrey Epstein
Okay,
discussion.
okay.
So that
But just in
we
terms
wanna
of
keep this-
prosecution,
yeah,
like the way that the deep state
Yeah.
notoriously right in front of our faces, they're letting criminals go, like obvious, blatant
Yeah. Oh yeah.
crimes,
Yeah.
and we're all just watching
Hunter
it.
Biden. There you go.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, the
Yeah.
idea that Fauci's going to come to any sort of justice. I mean, we know what happened with the whole AIDS thing way
Yeah.
back in the day. Like, he's not coming to justice, but it's just about how many people can see the lack
Somebody's-
of justice happen and stand up for themselves.
Somebody's got to be the fall guy.
Yeah.
He may be the one that's being sacrificed by them.
Yep.
But he's not going to suffer the true consequences that he should for his actions.
No,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's why we need some sort of something, man.
Yeah, I've been saying. I think with these emails,
he's been deserving of consequences since the AIDS issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
The fact that he stayed in any sort of position of power in the government, much less as related to health, is just
The highest paid
mind-blowing.
employee of the government.
Federal
Yeah.
government, yeah, highest paid employee. Yeah, that was a weird realization. That's crazy. Shoot.
Yeah, I think I am starting to think though that Fauci and Bill Gates could be fall guys.
Yep.
At this point.
Yep.
You know,
I still want to see them at Chateau d'If.
Yeah.
You know, from what's the movie? Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh, there's a new
But
one.
I mean, but those were innocent people they sent there to torture.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm not
Interesting.
advocating torture for anyone, but I'm just saying that.
No, we're not advocating torture. Yeah, no. Let's see.
Not
so
on the
just
podcast
for the
out
record, not on the podcast. We're not going to do that. So that was Belarus we were talking about. Belarusian President Lukashenko was offered $1 billion by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to implement COVID lockdowns in his country, and he said no and went public with that. So there you go.
Well, you don't have to threaten, coerce, and
So
pay
Belarus-
for a real pandemic.
Belarus.
People are dead. People are in the streets. You're losing family members. It's obvious to people around you that there's a mass problem with the sickness and death, and that's not what happened here. You don't have to pay people to convince them of something that's actually killing them.
Yeah.
pay the hospitals to call it COVID.
To cover it up. Yeah.
So we've got
So-
Belarusian.
I have a hard time listening to Kate Brown.
Oh.
I can't.
I did not pay attention to the press conference when he announced the lottery that chance to win $1 million or whatnot.
Is that our taxpayer money? Is that right?
But last week I was driving somewhere and I was listening to radio, and the radio came on with an ad about the fact, you could win $1 million, and it was a clip from her press conference.
Oh God.
And the talk about programming and tacit consent. The last line that she said was, "It's a chance to change your life."
That's the truth. That's the
And
truth.
it just hit me. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. But
Yeah.
They're telling you what they're
people are
doing.
agreeing. They're telling you what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And whether or not you're awake to it and you have discernment is what separates out whether or not you will fall for their spells and their lies to get you to be enslaved. And I mean, and I feel like that I always get into the spiritual aspect with this, the whole possibility of this shot that they're injecting into people causing issues with like your spiritual center, with your pineal gland, with your ability to connect to and relate to your higher source, whoever that might be for you. That's how we do that. And so the whole fluoride in the water causing that to harden up, like all of this seems like it's such a and a lot of people don't see it this way, but to me, it's just so clear. This is just a corruption of organic humanity away from God and God's creation and what is natural for us in order to get us to live in this weird Luciferian machine-like, false reality, as if that's the superior way. And it's sort of like that spiritual pitting again. Like to me, this is spiritual warfare, and it's just playing out under all of these different banners. But this is what we're seeing happen. I mean, and you can look at Bill Gates, and you can look at Fauci, and you can look.
That's why I'm an eternal optimist, because in the end, I know who wins.
I know. I was thinking that I was like, okay, God did not promise it would be easy, but he did promise victory. And in that we will rest.
Absolutely. Yep. Wow, guys. What an amazing chat. I love this. So, Bob, I want to ask, is there anything that you'd like our listeners, like any final thoughts or anything that you would like to point our listeners to, or anything you'd like to promote or anything like that?
Most important thing I can say is be in Salem.
Yeah.
Wednesday, June 9th.
Okay.
I would love to see 5,000-6,000 people
Yes.
on the mall across from the Capitol. I want this to blow away Timber Unity
Yeah.
There you go.
from the big one that they had last year.
Awesome.
And some people are complaining, why are you doing this on a Wednesday instead of a weekend? Well, the legislatures aren't working
Yeah,
on
exactly.
weekends. They're at home.
Yep.
It's an empty building. It's an empty building anyways because it's locked up, but they are inside there doing their thing, not letting us watch them. Connecting via Zoom is not being present.
Yeah.
And I want to send a message to the legislatures and state that enough is enough. We need to get our children back into school full time without ridiculous social distancing and face mask measures and so on. Let's focus on getting them educated again. Let's get our businesses back online. Let's get our businesses getting people in the door again instead of shuttered up. For a disease that's 2,600 people. I mean,
Yeah.
and if you know the statistics like I do, and I'm sure you do, with the CDC rule change on the death certificates.
Yes.
Yeah. In reality, only 6% of that 2,600 people died.
Didn't they
from
just
COVID.
lower it
They
to
died with
4%?
Yep. So they lowered it to 5.
Seriously.
I saw 5%. And prior, for like up until about 6 months ago, it said 2.6 average comorbidities, right?
Oh, it's like 4 something.
Now it's 4. It's like 3.9 comorbidities. So the average comorbidities have gone up, and the overall COVID-only case percentage has gone down. So that tells you, like,
Well,
yeah.
don't you worry, because we're cycling the PCR test much,
Yeah.
much lower for people who've been fully vaccinated. Though.
100%.
So, I mean,
Yep,
it all
yep,
works
yep.
out.
CDC stated that.
Yep. I had that conversation today. They're like, well, what do you have to say about the fact that all these people that are vaccinated are showing lower case numbers? And I'm like, well, you want me to explain how that works?
Because they're cycling it at a
and I'll pull-
guaranteed negative
And I'll pull
cycle.
up the CDC website where it literally says 28
cycles.
or less
Yep.
on the CDC website, whereas opposed to like I've got a letter from the head of the microbiology. I've got an email from the head of the microbiology department at one of the hospitals here in Eugene saying that they run their cycles up to 40 cycle thresholds with any cases up to 37 is considered a positive. So there you go. Case closed, done deal. See you later. Good night.
Yep.
So
Insanity.
it's insanity. So wow. All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being
Thank
with
you
us
so
tonight.
much.
Thank
this
It's
is
a pleasure joining
quite an
you.
honor.
And I will see you on Wednesday. Whether
yeah.
Maybe I'll come up with
I got to work, so
Yeah.
you guys need to go represent.
Yeah,
we
we
will.
You
be
guys, we already got some
representing for
signs all made up and everything.
Yeah, we
maybe?
do.
Yeah.
We
So
have like a picture of Kate Brown as a pig on there and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Wear white. White
Wear
clothes.
White clothes.
White
Will
clothes. Okay,
Awesome.
you got it.
You know, it's a vigil for those who we've lost to COVID,
Okay.
and everything else because of the lockdown.
Cool.
Now, honestly, I don't know anybody. I honestly do not know a single person that's died with or from COVID
Yeah.
in Oregon.
Me neither.
I have 6 friends that either lost a family member or a close friend to suicide in the past year.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have also. Yeah.
Yep.
Yet
Oh.
suicide, yet they're not final yet, and they won't publish the final numbers for a couple more months. But the suicide statistics for Oregon are actually lower than the year prior.
Interesting.
Which is
Interesting.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they just moved that column over, maybe
Right.
too. I don't know.
Maybe I was reading
Yeah.
that nationwide it was up 600% across the last year as of. I don't know. I'd have to find that study, but I know it's pretty diabolical too when you lock. I mean, and I mean this gets so deep because we have women and children or toxic situations, abusive situations who are locked indoors with their abusers. They can't get out to talk to anybody. They can't see a family member. They can't speak to a school counselor. There's nobody for them, and it becomes hopeless.
I'll get back to a comment I made earlier about the law of unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that shows up in the data, and somebody needs to do a deep dive on this. When we had the lockdown last year, nobody was going to their doctors for anything,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I did take a look at the statistics in the first half of the year and then the second half of the year for mortality among infants under 1 year of age. And the 3 primary causes of death for infants is accidents, congenital defects, and SIDS.
Yeah.
Do you know how the first half of the year when people weren't doing well baby visits,
Mm-hmm.
do you know how much the number of infant deaths dropped in Oregon?
Did they bottom out?
By 42% lower than the 10-year average prior.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because
There you
babies
go.
weren't in there getting vaccines
Kids,
every
right.
couple months.
There you go. We need to be shouting that from the rooftop.
In July, people started going to the doctors for regular visits again. The second half statistics are back on the same level that they had been prior.
Wow.
Wow.
It's
That's
the
heartbreaking.
eugenics death cult, man.
It is
We're
the
right
eugenics
We're in their
death cult.
grips.
Well, when we look at who Bill Gates was affiliated with,
Oh yeah.
from
All the way back.
all the way back.
Yep. Ernst Rudin and the whole eugenics depopulation that was exported to Nazi Germany, the whole thing. Yes.
Yeah.
So awesome, Bob. Well, thank you
Yeah,
so
well,
much,
we're
man.
definitely gonna have
This
to-
is
yeah.
this is quite an honor, and like hopefully we can catch up soon. We will definitely see you out there and in the Telegram groups and all that good stuff. So, thank you so much.
Pleasure being here. You guys have a great evening.
You too. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much,
Thanks,
Bob.
Bob. Oh man, it was great to have an Oregon lawyer on that, and dude, obviously
So
totally
on
on
the
the
level.
level, totally on the level.
Love
Same
it.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, a lot of good information, man. I don't know though. I don't know if I mean, there's the one part of me that like I have hope that we're gonna win in the long run, but there's also like the short term doesn't look too bright.
There's a definite looming huge plan B.
I mean, that's absolutely it. I mean, no matter where you're talking, whatever prophecy you want to refer to, it's always going to get really dark, really awful, and we're coming up to that. I think we're getting to the really dark, awful part, but we will prevail. Good will win. It may not happen in our lifetime. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I think that the big part though, like, is you talk to him or Brian Fester, or like these lawyers we talk to and stuff. It's like it has so much to do with the court that tries these cases, right? Like, and it's just the Oregon courts are corrupt.
Corrupt.
Right?
So corrupt.
Evil
yeah.
corruption.
Yep.
Yep.
I've been saying that about the family courts here for a long time, and it doesn't surprise me at all how high it goes. I was surprised last year, like you mentioned about with what happened with the Supreme Court, basically completely stomping all over our Constitution by allowing her to keep extending those emergency powers. So I guess I really lost. I shouldn't be surprised because it's Oregon, but I guess I just was, because still sometimes like the deep seeds of me are like, it's not all corrupt. Like some of the people that are serving us are like serving us, but it doesn't seem to be the case.
I think if you go a little east or go out of the big cities, that like there's not corruption, right?
Yeah.
If you get
Yeah.
into those courts,
Yeah.
seems like there's a whole chunk of Oregon that was like trying to secede to Idaho. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had our mutual
Springfield
friend
in
went
there,
out there
please?
the other
Yeah,
day.
could like Springfield be like a separate little static part of that deal? That would be nice, please.
we would love
Yeah.
that.
Eugene has better restaurants. I'm just saying. If we had to pick.
Well, we might be able to get like
And
some
also,
sort
it
of
would really
passport.
piss off most of the people in Eugene that happened, and that would really astound
Oh
me.
yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
They would probably set up little checkpoints to go to.
They'd
Excuse
have
me,
little
son.
Antifa camps.
Oh yeah, yeah. You know,
See, I just like that I'm on the. I can go to Eugene and get the benefits of Eugene, and then come home to Springfield where people are a little bit more awake.
Yeah, fair. Yep.
yeah. I've been going good, dude. I've been going into stores with like, no mask, dude. Like stores you wouldn't think of, like little mini marts and just little everything's like everywhere, no mask. Nobody's
Are you
saying
going
shit.
into places that has a "you must mask up"
Yeah.
sign on the door?
Oh yeah. Just go in and just don't give a
no,
shit.
that's
Just fuck it. Like I'm over it, you guys.
really?
Yeah. Kiss my
But
ass.
I still hear that it's men who are able to get away with that, and women.
It's my
like
white
that.
privilege that is.
Well, no, I'm not saying that.
I know.
I
Well,
know you're being
it was
sarcastic.
pointed out to me at one point that was.
Well,
my
I
white
want to
privilege.
go on the record and say that I thought that was utter fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
But okay,
Totally.
that was so out of line. But anyways,
Anyway.
But yeah, so we're if you're in Oregon, start pulling those masks off and walk into these stores.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them aren't. I haven't been putting them on when I go into the stores that don't have it marked on the doors. But if you'll notice, a lot of stores are taking that sign off their door, and they're just like, we're not gonna ask you. We don't like. They just the
be
average person
be done
doesn't
with
want to
it.
police that.
Be done with it.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So anyway,
Be done with it.
Encouragement. So.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Well, that was Bob Snee doing incredible work here in Oregon and so much amazing information. It sounds like Ed and I are going to be up at the Capitol on Wednesday. We hope to see all of you there. And until next time, I'm Megan, sitting here with my wonderful friends, Scott and Ed, all of us seeking truth and bringing it to you. We wish all of you intellectual prosperity. Good night.
Beep, 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 beep. Beep, 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 beep.